Brighton Theatre of the Air presents The Riddle by Eliza J. Hyde. Miriam had been Lady Elmer Black's personal maid for the last 7 months. Her stern appearance had never been a hindrance from placing in the most sought-after families. She had spent most of her adult life in service, yet her lofty manners made her seem far superior in standing to any of the dames whose attendance she was in. Rumours had it she was originally from a well-to-do family herself, opulent sea merchants trading with the Far East, and was orphaned as a young girl when her father had been declared lost at sea. Miriam had spent a few years in the care of an auntie and uncle, but when they were taken ill, she subsequently passed into service, her mother having died in childbirth. Her rigid posture and high puritanical collars added to her already haughty deportment, complemented by a steely stare that would make even dignitaries tremble. Known to her peers as the Iron Maiden, she never let her reputation slide, and almost enjoyed the uneasiness she stirred in others. She had come highly recommended by Mrs. Prithers, who was emigrating to Australia.
The weather, dear. My rheumatism is getting worse. I feel peculiar. Couldn't possibly stay on. I spent the last 2 winters barricaded indoors. Doctor said the change will do me good. She's perfect for you. You'll see.
Miriam was not fond on moving down under, detesting the prospect of hot, long days, and had handed in her notice in ample time, so Mrs. Prithers could find a suitable replacement, and she herself was praying to secure just as good a position with Lady Elmer. And so it came to pass. It was considered prestigious to hold a post at the Blacks' mansion, and rumours had been rife since forever that there was an invaluable antique hidden somewhere on the premises, a painting whose mystery could only be unlocked by solving a riddle. No one, including current and past owners, knew where it was hidden. The riddle was written as a dedication on the prologue of De Castro's Roteiro from Lisbon to Goa, and its unlocking revealed a hidden message. It was said that the person who could decipher it would acquire great riches, but legend had it that there was a curse attached to it.
Nonsense! Silly rumours! No one really believes any of it. Mere hocus pocus.
Aren't you the least bit curious?
Why would I? None of it has any relevance. Nonsense. Surely, if it was that important, someone would have made an effort to unravel it by now. It's been 300 years.
Even so, any idea where it could be hidden?
Probably lying in a pile, somewhere amongst Godfrey's junk collection. There are papers somewhere. The nunnery is supposed to take most of the lot, but delays. Oh, Louise, endless delays. Paperwork missing. Signatures needed. It'll be years before we're rid of it all. Godfrey was such a hoarder. So many trinkets from all over the world. I suspect it just lies somewhere forgotten. Good riddance one day, I say. I couldn't care less.
Captain Merrill Black, the oblique slithers of his grinning eyes deriding the guests below, looked down from his giant portrait high on the far wall, still scrutinising anyone who dared to enter, though he'd been over 200 years dead. He had acquired a copy of De Castro's book while serving as a Navy admiral abroad at the time of the Caravel ships, and had travelled the world in search of new lands. On his deathbed, he ordered the book was to be passed down through the family line, and claimed the riddle contained both a blessing and a curse within. No one ever paid any attention, apart from Lady Elmer's late husband Godfrey, who favoured it as his mostly guarded treasure.
It runs in the family. Their side, I mean.
What does, dear?
Lunacy. One of the Blacks' family traits, amongst other things. Not that they don't have good ones too. And nevertheless, it's well known they all end the same way.
And how is that?
Delirious.
De Castro's book was kept on display in a tall rectangular glass cabinet in the main hall, the pièce de résistance, at the insistence of Lady Elmer's late husband Godfrey, for guests to admire and read the riddle.
Golden whispers fly to the wind as the musician strikes the strings. Sweet notes will fill the air where the eye of the eagle dares.
They all read it and laughed at it, saying it had sprung from the vivid imagination of a drunken sailor. No one had ever unravelled what it meant, but it was a hot conversation topic that often arose amongst the servants too. Miriam had a keen interest in it, though in public she dismissed it as senile nonsense, often laughing out loud, to the surprised response of onlookers, who had hardly ever seen her display any sign of human emotion, gritting her crowded straight teeth hound-like, as if to run off any potential opponents. Upon taking residency at the Blacks' mansion, Lady Elmer couldn't help but notice Miriam's peculiar schedule. She rarely took time off or ventured beyond the property gates, and never mixed with the other servants, fueling rumours she considered herself above them, austere and aloof, clad in head-to-toe black-fitted priestly tunics. Miriam had extremely high standards in her work and personal appearance, and she paid great attention to detail, both to her own presentation and Lady Elmer's. Her work was impeccable, and she was proud of the fact she had never been reprimanded by any of the ladies she had attended to. Quite the opposite, they all sang her praises. She led a very Spartan existence, keeping her room simple and unadorned. She spent most of her free time taking long walks in the garden. Everyone had noticed how Miriam would walk the grounds for hours, totally absorbed in her own thoughts, oblivious to any passers-by. What could she possibly be so engrossed in, was the question on everyone's lips. Many had come to believe she was mulling over sad events from her past, and speculated she had lost a husband or child, or both. Every so often she would take a day's leave, rose and left early, saying she was visiting an aunt in East London, but the other servants had become suspicious, as she was also nocturnal. Those who occasionally needed something from the kitchen had often heard steps and seen lights on and off, and a silhouette in different parts of the mansion. Rumours started circulating that the house was haunted, and many became reluctant to venture out of their bedrooms at all. These strange phenomena started shortly after Miriam moved in, but no one had made the link. In her brief employment, Miriam had suggested many changes to Lady Elmer's routine and lifestyle, including more walks in the garden.
Fresh air works wonders for your complexion, ma'am.
A whirlwind of afternoon tea dates, personal appearances and dress changes had been welcomed by Lady Elmer, who had been much complimented by her peers.
Change is as good as a rest, ma'am.
There was something elegant about Miriam, albeit unnerving. Her straight and proud deportment was far from the usual posture commonly assumed amongst people of her rank.
I say, where did you learn to pour tea like that? It's marvellous.
Japan, ma'am. 5 years, with Lady Rivet.
Lady Rivet? That name does sound familiar. Jane?
Yes. Isn't she the one who... Oh no, the husband.
Her husband? Yes, it was her husband, wasn't it? The dashing fellow who was in the army and then became ambassador. The Rivets, that's right. Went to Japan. They're still there, I believe. They let you take your leave?
My aunt, taken ill, ma'am. Gravely ill. I had to be closer to London. I met Mrs. Prithers in Japan. She was due to return to England shortly. Her lady's maid was to retire. Lucky I could step in.
Lucky her, indeed.
I studied the art of tea for 2 years. Their secret is the pot, ma'am, washed with tea, over and over, layer upon layer. It gives it a special sheen, and the tea an unparalleled depth of flavour. Almost impossible to replicate with normal china.
I see. Still, we do have the best china.
If I may, ma'am, you must hold the cup higher. It imparts a particular turbulence which renders the tea less acidic. Would you believe it, ma'am? I also mix my own blends. I'm a tea master.
Oh, I see. You wouldn't mind. Please say if I'm being impertinent. I wouldn't want to impose, but perhaps you could. My husband, he snores so. Oh, I can't remember the last time I could sleep the night through. Is there a herb for that?
Certainly, ma'am. I shall do my utmost to prepare a decoction. I shall have a sample ready in a week.
It works for me. I have my very own special nightcap. Haven't slept so well since, since Godfrey passed.
Miriam soon became very popular among Lady Elmer's guests, not least because of her tea expertise. Eastern-themed tea parties had become all the rage in the upper echelons, and Lady Elmer was pleased, as her own popularity had soared. Madam was delighted, but had recently noticed that she was slightly more fatigued during the day, although her nights were peaceful and nightmare-free. Most of the servants had also become partial to Miriam's brews, and reported they were sleeping more soundly.
Ladies, I have a surprise. But first, a slice of cake. A new creation by Mrs. Chalmers. Walnut mousse. So delicate it melts in your palate. In honour of my beloved nephew, Victor, who will be joining us once again. He's coming to spend his summer holidays with his favourite aunt. Oh, I couldn't be more delighted.
Oh, Victor! What is he reading again?
Lo, at Cambridge. Those ghastly exams. We need to look after him before he goes back.
When is he arriving?
Next week. I got a letter from him yesterday.
Oh, yes, Victor. Dashing young man.
He's the only boy in the family, so bright and inquisitive.
A week later.
Ah, Victor, look at you. So pale, Mrs. Chalmers has invented a new mousse in your honour. We'll have tea served in the garden, one of Miriam's reviving blends.
I say, Auntie, I'm taken aback by her demeanour. What do we know about her?
She might seem a bit odd at first. I can assure you there's nothing to be concerned about.
I don't trust her. I want to keep an eye and investigate further. I'd like to be allowed another room, not far from hers, to monitor her movements.
You cannot sleep in the servants' quarters.
Not fair. There's a room on the other side of a wall, near the connecting door upstairs. I want to take that one.
As you wish. I'll have it made for you.
No, I'm seeing to it, with help from a manservant who's suspicious of her as well. He said she often gets up during the night to respond to your bell calls, but then she disappears and returns hours later. I must follow her.
Victor observed Miriam's routine over many nights, She would systematically tap the walls with her ears glued to them for about an hour and take notes in a black notebook, hidden in the bosom of her high-starched collared black tunic, buttoned all the way up to her chin. She would turn at random, as if to check she wasn't followed, and eventually would return to her room.
I say, something's up, Auntie. She's spending most of her time in the East Wing lately.
Ah, the East Wing! Scarcely part of the house anymore. It's in its heyday decades ago. We used it for official balls, receptions. They're a rare event now, since the passing of your Uncle Godfrey. Harmless.
Very well. But what is she up to? What's the meaning of this?
I'm utterly clueless. Perhaps she suffers from what do they call it?
Somnambulism?
That's the word. You clever boy. She's just walking.
No, it's not that. She seems wide awake to me.
That's the whole point, dear. They seem awake, but they're sleeping.
I beg to differ. I'm not convinced.
A few weeks went by, punctuated by tea gatherings and the odd soiree. One night Victor followed Miriam from a distance, but never saw her enter the East Wing library through a secret panel, and now used as a storeroom. He waited patiently in the corridor until finally she emerged holding a small rectangular frame under one arm and a candle holder in the other, anxiously looking over her shoulder every few steps. She took an unexpected turn and bolted upright as she stumbled upon him. Enervated from the sudden shock, she faltered and tugged so hard on her tunic, a few of the top buttons burst and danced on the floor, rattling and echoing in the distance, alongside the magnifying glass she had been grasping, looking as faint as a shadow. The candle holder quivered, spluttering wax on the marble. The frame slipped from under her arm and laid face up on the ground, revealing a painting with a dark background, and its canvas was entirely filled with the face of a blonde cherub playing a mandolin. A minuscule golden signature, invisible to the naked eye, was closely intertwined with musical notes on the bottom right. Raphael Sanzio, only visible under a magnifying glass for those who knew what to look for.
What is the meaning of this?
I'm to clean the painting and get it ready to be collected.
Their ardent eyes met again, and Miriam, burning in a cold sweat, launched at a bewildered Victor, pressed her lips and body against his, and surrendered. Then all fell silent. The day after unfolded uneventfully, although Miriam was even more withdrawn than usual, barely uttering a word. After dinner, Lady Elmer wearily climbed the stairs under Miriam's watchful eye. Her arms twisted in random contortions, trying to hold on to the intricate banister. Her heavy-set body somehow lagged behind her, dragging herself forward like a heavy sack. She couldn't understand why that evening everything was such an effort. Every step felt like lead, her feet scrambling in a clumsy drunken climb. Halfway through, she stopped to catch a well-earned rest, tiny beads gliding on her forehead, Tinkerbell-like. She sighed and wiped her brow. Once at the top, she looked ahead at her bedroom, one of the first rooms along. The ground was flat now, so it was easier, and within a few steps she would be inside, but even opening the door was causing her to fatigue. She felt for the familiar sliding switch and slumped onto the recliner.
May I have another cup of my night herbal blend? I feel so tired.
Certainly, ma'am.
Miriam bowed and hastily turned round, her savagely fiendish grin on an otherwise perfectly groomed face. Lady Elmer fell fast asleep as soon as she hit the recliner, and never made it to bed. Victor had been keeping his distance, allowing Miriam to go about her chores while monitoring her movements from afar. He had slipped a blackmail note under her door the night before, and was eagerly awaiting her reply. He was on high alert, suspicious of her cryptic and disquieting activities. He spent all night in the main drawing room, occasionally casting lazy glances at an impressionist art book on the coffee table, and drawing on cigars. But on the cusp of dawn his eyelids finally succumbed, not knowing whether from the heavy smoke clouds or a devious trick from Hypnose himself. Miriam never slept either. She calmly and quietly packed a few possessions into her leather governess bag and laid on the perfectly creaseless bed fully dressed. She made her way downstairs while it was still dark and tiptoed out at 5 a.m. At the gates she turned to linger at the mansion, her wicked grin the only spark in the glareless dawn. She walked the 3 miles to the station in total silence and boarded the 6:30 a.m. to London. Once there, she bought another ticket and set sail at the East Docks. 2 days later in Saint-Germain, the twin sisters, Mademoiselle Jacqueline and Jacinthe Hubert, were taking a leisurely stroll down Rue Bonaparte.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, chérie.
Who is that, Jacqueline? That's Miss Huber, an English heiress. She's new to Paris. Just moved after her aunt passed away in England. She surely looks like she has a spring in her step, does she? Perhaps we should invite her over for tea. Certainly. We'll do that next time we see her. We should get to know her. She sure knows her fashion.
Miss Aubert made her way down Le Rive Gauche. She stopped on the parapet and looked down at the calm, dark waters of the Seine, her typical grin tainting her perfectly painted devil-red lips. She resolutely took out the blackmail note from her delicately embroidered handbag, folded it several times, careful it wouldn't get caught in her white lace gloves, then shredded it into confetti and watched it sprinkle into the breeze, floating serenely below. She shrugged her shoulders and walked to a cafe, where she settled at a table overlooking the river, slowly sipping her lemon tea, and began writing.
Dear Carla, I finally made it to Paris. The events unfolded as planned. I have taken back my place in society, albeit in another country. The family heirloom is back where it belongs. I will have no shortage of offers for it here. To think they had left it in a pile of junk bound for a convent. Ignorant fools. I have instructed agents to procure me suitable living quarters. I shall write again shortly, after I am properly settled, hoping you will join me before the summer end. P.S. Daddy was right. Yours, Miriam Aubert du Castro.
Then she prized open a small compartment in her purse and unfolded a thin, worn, small piece of paper she had kept for the last 30 years.
Never, ever let go of it. It's worth a fortune.
Thank you, Father. Finally, we have been avenged.
His last words echoed.
Golden whispers fly to the wind. The painting signature is among the golden music notes. As the musician strikes the strings, the cherub's fingers point its direction. Sweet notes will fill the air. Lots of money to be made. Where the eye of the eagle dares. If you can spot Raphael's signature with a magnifying glass.
Miriam Aubert de Castro crushed the paper with the riddle, tossed it into the Seine, and walked away. Upon contact with the water, it unravelled, and another inked message became visible.
This painting, a joy to behold. Sister Mary's convent must hold mortal wounds. great misfortune and ruin on the one who seeks gold shall befall.
Attention! Mademoiselle! Mademoiselle!
Brighton Theatre of the Air presents The Riddle, written and directed by Eliza J. Hyde. Any resemblance to actual persons or events is purely fictional and coincidental. Casting: Narrator and credits: Matthew Shelton-Jones. Mrs. Prithers, Lady Hannah, Jacqueline and Jacinta Hubert, Laura King. Lady Elma, Eliza J. Hyde. De Castro, John Benford. Miriam, Miss Hubert and Lady Jane, Sarah Lindsay. Victor, Guy Dixon. Carriage driver, Dave Patchett. Music and sound design, Paul G. Terry.